listen, thanks again for everybody for coming along here this evening. I'm absolutely delighted to have you along for our first webinar in the theme of human resources and all that it encapsulates. So our guest speaker here this evening is Maria Treacy of an Irish company. She's an Irish lady of reconnect.ie. And we really are excited and delighted to have Maria here today. And I suppose what Maria will be doing is sharing her top tips from her own very experienced HR lens. So Maria really is no stranger to startups and also to us at Growth University. She's worked kind of with us kind of very closely in recent months and has actually also helped us with our 6th hire for the team, which will hopefully be joining us very, very soon. So Maria has over 20 years of experience helping businesses of all shapes and sizes. And she set up her own HR consultancy 4 years ago, helping startups and business owners with no in-house HR to help them make better decisions and choices when building out a high-performing team. So I suppose, look, everyone has, I suppose the world of HR can be exciting and complicated and at times stressful. So we really are delighted to have Maria here just to kind of give a bit of a helpful spin on everything tonight. So Maria just has a few slides that she'll be going through, and then we're very much open to any questions or comments at any stage. Just pop them into the chat box, raise your hand if you'd like to come off mic, and of course we will have time for Q&A as well at the very, very end. So just get us to, and now I'll hand over to Maria. So you can take the lead there, Maria, and fingers crossed that the storm stays away for the next 50 minutes.
Great.
Thanks
Great.
very much, Maria.
Thanks, Aoife. Welcome, everybody. Delighted to be here. Thanks for the intro, Aoife. So I guess, look, what I'm going to do is share with you my top 10 tips based on working with startups and what I've heard and what I've seen. And then I really would like you to come on stream with your questions, and we'd love to make this session as interactive as possible, because I can only make the session as meaningful, I suppose, based on what your needs are and what's going on in your business right now. So I suppose without further ado, one thing I hear a lot working with startups is making the right hire is a big challenge. And making the wrong hire, I suppose, is costly for a business. It can be damaging. It can hold the business back, and it can damage your confidence. So I'm going to kick off with that and start with my top tip around how you make the right hires. So the first thing, really, based on experience of working with startups, is you need to be very, very clear on what it is you need from a recruitment point of view. And you need to understand what the recruitment need is and why you need it. So that means, you know, really digging deep into your business, understanding, is it an operational need or is it a strategic need? Is it a manager? Is it a more junior level? What's getting you into the weeds right now? What's, you know, holding you back from achieving your business goals? And what happens often, I see, is that business probably don't spend the time looking at this and having discussions around it. And what ends up happening is you move on to looking at a CV that comes across the table, having a chat with somebody, and then you think, yeah, maybe that's what I need my business right now. And you haven't really looked at why you need the resource in your business. So that would be the first thing. It should be, I suppose, the longest part of any recruitment process. Before you actually advertise, you should be having these lengthy discussions with your team, whoever's in there with you. So that's tip number one, be crystal clear on what it is your recruitment need is before you go any further. Tip number two, and this leads on, I suppose, to spending the time prepping and planning. You got to spec out the job. And again, I suppose what I've seen happen with businesses that I work with, you know, they probably have a vague idea what they need or what they think they need in the business. And they have, you know, identified a couple of key responsibilities that the person, you know, would take care of, but they haven't really looked at, you know, details like the reporting line, the title, and the title is important because, again, mistakes that have been made or I've seen made is that, you know, if you think you have this big fancy title that you think, yeah, this is what really the position is, but it makes no sense to the marketplace. And so you don't get the quality candidate and you don't get the right candidate applying for the job. So title is very important. Reporting line, you know, again, dual reporting lines don't work. There should be a very clear reporting line that the person should report into. And again, I suppose this has come up recently. Does that mean that they can only work with one manager, whoever comes into your business? No, that's not the case. You can have them working across the business on projects, on various teams, but you should be very clear on who the person reports into from, you know, a personal point of view. One-to-ones should be carried out with one manager on a weekly basis. Key responsibilities, then you need to spec out. Okay, you need to spec out what is this person going to be responsible for, and then on top of that, what's the key really for quality recruitment is what are the essential requirements? What are the key core requirements that this person must have to do the job that you expect and you want them to do? So when I talk about key essential requirements, I'm talking about, qualifications, experience, skills. What are the core skills? What are the number of years experience that you're looking for? So let's take, for example, we recently hired a paid advertising specialist. That individual needed, 1 to 2 years agency experience. This is what you should be putting into the spec. These are the essential requirements that should be advertised and in the spec. And if we don't put them up, if they're not included in the spec, what's going to happen is that you're not getting the funnel of candidates. You're not getting the quality candidates through. And that leads to problems, because then you're not able to screen quality candidates. You're not going to meet them across the table on a Zoom call, and that's an issue. So the core essential requirements must be specced out and really thought through before you go to advertising. And that's where the lengthy discussion comes in. Other things you need to consider, I suppose, when you're speccing out and doing that preparation before you advertise, you need to consider, the salary range. What's the budget? What do you have available? And again, that's going to dictate, I suppose, the level and the type of person that you can bring into the business. You need to consider the contract type. What kind of contract are you going to bring them in on? Is it like permanent? Is it a project-based contract? Is it a consultant? Is it an outside indirect hire that you need? Is it an enduring need in the business? These are all the things that you need to consider. So you look at title, you look at reporting line, you look at key responsibilities, you look at the essential core requirements and skills and experience that they must have, and you also consider the salary. And something again that has come up around salary is, do you actually advertise salary on the spec? That comes down to you and your business and what I suppose fits well with you. But often it can help to attract the right range or the right level of person that you're looking for. If you put a range in there, so let's say 50 to 60,000, or is it 70 to 80,000? You can put in a range, and then you hire based on, I suppose, their experience when you meet them across the table. That's tip number 3. So speccing out is just tip number 2. Speccing out is really, really important. Tip 3, be really, really transparent then when you advertise. So once you've specced out the role, you've discussed within your team what it is you really need to achieve your business goals for the next 6 months, 12 months. You then need to put that into an advert and share it, okay? So again, the details of, I'm talking here about the really fine details of how many years experience are you looking for? Is it proven ability in Google Analytics? And I say the word proven in inverted commas, because again, if you're going to post in an ad, experience in Google Analytics, the individual might apply and think, sure, I have experience in Google Analytics, but they mightn't have the 2 years proven experience in Google Analytics that you're looking for. So that kind of detail is really what's needed in the spec to give you the quality candidates that you're looking for. Okay, if you don't do it, your quality will suffer. So that is critical. Tip 4, when you start the process of recruitment, make sure that you manage expectations of the candidate from the very, very beginning. So what I mean here is, when you bring them in for the first call, for the first screening call, make clear what's the process, what lies ahead. You want to keep your candidates warm. You don't want to lose them halfway through the process where they get, a bit ticked off because the process is too long. So you manage expectations from the very beginning. That ensures that you have a smooth process, they know what to expect, and you keep them warm and engaged throughout the process. And And then I suppose the other thing, you know, that I've seen that not done that can hurt a business is that they don't have a number of stages involved in the process. It's important to have a number of stages involved. You know, have a stage 1, a stage 2, involve your team, the team that you trust in the process. Have, you know, a trusted team of interviewers that can help you make a better, more informed decision around your hire. And then the other thing that can also really benefit a business is when making a hire is some sort of practical, you know, assessment. That really does work. So if you have a job or a vacancy and you know that there's a practical skill set that you can test through the interview process, do it. So if it means giving them a technical assignment or a dummy assignment, do it. Okay, tip number 5. Stick to your key questions and benchmark. And what I mean here is that, you know, prepare in advance of your interview. Prepare the questions. Bring it back to the spec and what you've spec'd out in advance of your hire. So it should be linked to those core skills that you're really want to test. So we talked about, you know, Google Analytics as an example, proven experience in Google Analytics. Then you need to be testing that. That should be part of your questions that you prepare. Okay, and that's then how you benchmark your strongest candidate. If you're asking the same questions of all your candidates, you really will get a true understanding as to who's the strongest. If they have the depth of experience, it'll shine through once you're asking them the key questions. Now, this is not to say, right, that you can't, you know, probe or explore or ask other questions. Of course you can, you got to be fluid, but you should be really sticking to the core skills and competencies that you've identified at the very beginning that you need to test. Okay, that is really, really important. Tip number 6, always focus on past experience. And again, I suppose working with startups, sometimes, you know, you go in, you haven't prepared the questions, you say, what can you do and what would you do? But you don't actually ask the candidate, what have they done in the past? So give me an example of a time when you last used Google Analytics and it positively impacted the numbers. There is an example where you focus on past experience where they actually have proven that they used Google Analytics and how it positively impacted the numbers in the business. So really, really be strict on yourself in preparing those questions and focusing in on examples. And again, and I've seen this happen, you know, candidates sometimes struggle, and if they struggle, that's fine. Leave them struggle. They're obviously not the strongest candidate. They mightn't have the depth of experience. They mightn't have the number of examples that you would expect them to have. They can't share that with you because they haven't got the depth of experience. So don't feel that you have to help them, but do ensure that you focus on past experience. And they call that, look, competency-based interviewing. That's what it's known as in the HR world. Really, it's about past experience, focusing on that. Tip number 7, when your employee comes on board and they start and they've accepted the job, the key really to retaining your good people, keeping them engaged, and it's difficult in today's climate because it's a tough marketplace. Retention is a concern and I suppose a challenge for employers. You've got to agree deliverables up front. What do you expect these people to deliver in the next 6 months? You got to agree that with them at the very start. Once that's clear, you have agreed, I suppose, with the candidate what you expect of them. And then it's about managing them and managing their performance and do they achieve them. And I call it managing probation, okay? They're going to be on a probation period, typically 6 months for the first part of their career in your business. That is the time to really look at how your individual is performing. If it's a case that they're not hitting the mark, then that probation period should be extended. And I know in European law, it's different to US law. And I understand there's a lot of US people on the call today. It still is the optimal, the right time to catch poor performance during the probation period. And I suppose you, as a manager and as a business owner, have a responsibility to agree at the very, very start of the working relationship what it is you want them to achieve. So then that you can manage the performance and you can have discussions with them around how they're doing. So that's tip number 7, agree the deliverables when they come in the door and manage the probation. If it's a case in Ireland, I suppose, if it's a case that they don't pass their probation, the employee leaves. If the probation is missed, or if you don't manage performance during that period, then what can happen is that the employee slips through the cracks, and it's going to be a very, very costly exercise to manage them out of the business, and it can hurt the business badly. So that is an important point for those of you who are based in Europe. Tip number 8, and this I can't emphasize, I suppose, the importance of weekly one-to-ones with your direct reports. This is the kernel really of keeping and retaining happy staff and happy employees. I'm not a big fan, to be honest, of performance management or paper pushing or, you know, having a formal system in place, but I am a big fan of weekly one-to-ones. It's what works. It's what can change a culture, shape a culture, and it's what will retain your people. Employees want to have feedback on how they're doing. So through holding one-to-ones, what you do is that you sit down with your individual. It's an informal chat discussion on a weekly basis, schedule time in the diary, and you sit down with them and you let them run the meeting. Ask them how they're doing. How did they get on this week? You know, is there any, you know, barriers, delays to what the deliverables are? Is there any way you can help? How can you support them? You're acting really as a support for them. And then there's an opportunity for you to check in on what's the situation at home. You know, are they switching off, which is a real concern for those that are remote businesses and have remote employees. Employees burn out if they don't switch off. So it's important for a manager to have the finger on the pulse to know what's happening, what's going on in the home situation. It's also an opportunity for you to check in, is there any stretch projects they want to get involved in? You know, it's important for you to know what the career development plans of your individuals are. You know, where do they want to excel? Where do they want to grow? Where do they want to stretch themselves in your business? And then that enables you and allows you to align them properly to your business, and have a kind of a career map or career plan for them. So the weekly one-to-ones are critical really to you understanding your team and aligning them to your business. The next tip, and I suppose it's an opportunity as well in the one-to-one to do this, is to give them feedback, right? Every employee wants feedback. And this is where, you know, I suppose based on experience working with startups, this is, and managers, all managers really, this is where managers tend to fall down or they don't do enough of. It's giving the feedback. Every employee wants feedback. Think back to your own early career. You really are hungry for feedback to know where you're doing well and you're not doing well and where you can make improvement. So give feedback to your individuals, and you can do it. You can make it a common, you know, a regular practice at those weekly one-to-ones. You know, the observations that you made during the week, you did a fantastic job there working with the client on X call. You know, the client was upset, and you really listened to the client and diffused the situation. I'm giving you an example here of being specific. There's no point in saying to your employee, you did a great job. You did a great job on the call. And they're saying, well, what exactly did I do? They don't know. So one of the core requirements here is, you know, be specific on the feedback and let them know what they did well. And likewise, I suppose, if it's a case where there's improvement needed, it's an opportunity to discuss this with your employee in that weekly one-to-one call. If there's a need for improvement, be specific around where they're not reaching the mark on the deliverables, where they didn't reach, you know, or do what you expected them to do, and didn't deliver the results. So feedback is critical really to the success of the relationship and retaining your talent, your hot talent, once you've recruited the right people. Tip number 10. This is really, really important to give your employees a sense of purpose in the business, right? Share the vision, you know, let them know where the business is going, the direction of the business. What's the overall vision for your business? It's important to share that with your employee, because employees want to feel that they belong to a business, and they really need a sense of purpose. And that's what will engage employees and keep them motivated and keep them plugged into your business. And again, there's lots of research and studies out there that if you don't do this, if you don't share the vision as to where you want to go, what's the big grand plan, then you lose employees, and they're going to feel that they don't have purpose in the business. So that is critical to, I suppose, the success of retaining your hot talent in your business. So there might look short and sweet, top 10 tips around how to attract, first of all, recruit the right people into your business, and second of all, retain them. So look, I'd love to hear what are your challenges. If there's any questions that you have, put it in the chat box and let's explore it. And I think there's 17 in the chat, so let's do it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Maria. There's really so much in that. It was absolutely brilliant just to get, I suppose, the perspective from the expert in the area, because I suppose like any startup, there's always so many competing priorities, and it's just good to know that these things just kind of help any founder or entrepreneur just kind of think about, I suppose, a kind of a process-driven way for approaching any of this, because obviously getting the right hire is so vitally important for any startup